Hey guys, it's your average middle-aged American back again with another reaction video. This one is going to bring us back to America by Ryan Shirley, amazing videographer and photographer. And this is going to be the top 25 places to visit in America. I believe he is American, but he spends a lot of time traveling the world. So I'm curious to know what his opinion is on the best places to see in the USA. So if you haven't already, please subscribe. Doesn't cost you anything. Helps me out tremendously. Thumbs up also helps. And enough jibber jabber. Let's get on with it.
What's up, guys? My name is Ryan, and I've spent most of my life living in the United States, and I want to show you my favorite places. So here's my USA top 25. The U.S. is an incredible country, from the beautiful Hawaiian Islands to the wild rock formations of the Southwest. Each part of the U.S. has something unique to offer that deserves a visit. Let's start this video off at beautiful.
Yeah, guys, you got to remember, the United States is one country, but it has 50 states and 5 populated territories and a bunch of other territories that are for military. So it's basically 55 little countries. Our Constitution says that the states run themselves, and then the federal government just kind of protects the whole country. There's some federal laws, but it's mostly military, interstate travel and commerce, and then international trade. So each state kind of does its own thing. So between the terrain, the environment, the economy, the climate, the size, the population density, political, everything's different in every state. There's somewhere around 20,000 cities and towns in America, and they're all different. I mean, you could literally drive 4, 5, 6 hours and be in a completely different type of environment. Laws could be different, everything. Most of the normal laws are the same as far as, you can't beat up people and mug people and all that stuff, but other laws could be different. Drug laws can be different. Speeding limits can be different. All kinds of different things. Taxation can be different. Some states have a federal or a state income tax. Some states don't. Sales tax on items that you purchase will vary depending on what state you're in. So long story short, it's like 55 little countries. And it's basically, if you take the United States and you compare it to Europe, it's within 4% size-wise. So basically, the United States is one country, but it's the size of Europe that has, 47, 48, 50 countries, something like that. So it's almost the same kind of dynamic. Even languages. English is not the official language of America. A lot of people think it is. It's not. We don't have one because of the diversity. There are places people don't speak English at all. You go down to Miami, there'll be blocks of people that don't speak English. You go up to New York, there'll be people speaking all kinds of different languages, even very rare languages. So it all depends. You go out west, you could have more Native Americans. You go to Alaska, that's a whole different world. So it's all quite different. And that's why a lot of Americans don't travel outside of America very often, because it's a lot cheaper to stay in America and you still get a tremendous amount of diversity.
Lake Tahoe. I have to say that it's my favorite lake in the USA. Located right on the Nevada and California border, Lake Tahoe is the second deepest lake in America with a depth of over 1,600 feet. It's just absolutely massive. What I love about this lake is how clear the water is. It's just such a stunning blue color. It's also famous for having smooth granite rocks that peek out of the water. Now, a great place to go is Sand Harbor Beach. It's full of clear water and tons of Lake Tahoe rocks. It's an ideal place to swim and paddleboard. Me and my wife were there back in May. Now, while the water was freaking cold, it was still fun to go there and enjoy the scenery. If you do go, I'd recommend visiting in July or August so the water can warm up a little. After, we're going to head over to Yosemite National Park. Now, located about a 4 hours drive from Lake Tahoe, Yosemite Yosemite is one of the most stunning national parks. It's famous for its massive granite cliffs, clear streams, and powerful waterfalls. One of the coolest features of the park is Half Dome. It's this gigantic piece of granite that rises over 5,000 feet from the valley below. One side is a sheer cliff, while the other half has the appearance of a rounded dome. One of the most famous waterfalls in the park is Yosemite Falls. It's one of the world's tallest, with its upper falls being 1,430 feet high. One of the more peculiar waterfalls in the park is Horsetail Falls. During mid-February, the setting sun hits the water just right,
Wow.
creating the illusion of a firefall.
It looks like
Yosemite is
lava.
home to some of the most beautiful spots in the U.S., and I hope you all can visit. From Yosemite, we're going to head to the coast to visit Big Sur. Now, located on the Pacific 101 Highway, Big Sur is one of America's most scenic drives, known for its winding turns, seaside cliffs, and views of the misty coastline. One of the coolest places in Big Sur is the Bixby Creek Bridge. It's one of California's most photographed bridges, and you'll understand why when you get there. Big Sur is also home to Midway Falls, which is an 80-foot waterfall that falls onto the beach below.
You don't see that very often, a waterfall that falls onto a beach instead of onto a body of water. Imagine the tide probably changes that. But it's interesting, and I wonder how deep the hole is that it's eroding as it falls into that. That's why people have gutters on their houses, so that they don't dig holes from the water coming off their roof, and mess up their foundation. It's interesting. I didn't know that. I'm just an average middle-aged American. What do I know about California?
That falls onto the beach below. If you keep driving south on the 101, it'll take you to this elephant seal vista point. It's this beach filled with thousands of elephant seals. They're some of the largest and weirdest animals I've ever seen. Depending on what time of year you go there, they may be sleeping on the beach or fighting to the death. Pretty crazy animals. Now, while we're still in California, we're going to visit the California redwoods. Now, the redwoods are the tallest trees in the world, with the highest reaching 379 feet tall. There are groves of redwoods scattered along the northern California coast.
Yeah, think about that. Think about a tree that's, 125 meters tall. It's crazy. And it blocks out the whole sun. Like, it's almost like some kind of a rainforest or something, but it's just these giant trees.
Plenty of places to see them. I went to the Jedediah Smith Redwood State Park. We explored the grove, and I was just blown away by the size of the trees. Not only were the trees amazing, but just the whole ambience of being there.
Yeah, you can't even get a grasp on it until you see like someone drive a van next to a tree, and it's the tree's trunk is has the girth of a motor vehicle, or bigger. I mean, it really is quite impressive.
Trees pretty much blocked out all sunlight, and then the ground was covered in these ferns that made it feel like you were in a Jurassic Park film. I mean, such a magical place. Now, after exploring California, we're going to make the drive up to Oregon. Now, I have to say that Oregon is one of my favorite states. It's home to massive volcanoes and countless waterfalls.
Wow.
Me and my wife did a road trip through the state about a month ago, and it was extremely enjoyable. Oregon is home to some of the best coastline in the USA. I highly recommend just driving down the 101 Coastal Highway. One of my favorite stops was this place called Meyer Beach. It had these massive rocks, and we had the beach all to ourselves. Another scenic spot is the Samuel H. Boardman Scenic Corridor. It's one of the most beautiful spots on the Oregon coast, in my opinion. If you keep driving up the 101, you'll reach Cannon Beach. When you think of Oregon, you might think of Cannon Beach. I remember first seeing this place on Steven Spielberg's movie The Goonies, and I've wanted to go ever since. It's famous for its haystack rock. It's this massive 235-foot sea stack that shoots out of the ocean. In 2013, it was listed as one of the world's 100 most beautiful places by National Geographic, and I totally understand why. It's a wonderful beach to relax or jump in the water if you can handle the cold. After Oregon, we're going to head up to neighboring Seattle. Located in the state of Washington, Seattle has to be one of my favorite cities. I just love how it's built right on the Puget Sound, contrasted with a skyline full of skyscrapers and a backdrop of the massive Mount Rainier. Now, one place you gotta visit if you're in Seattle is Pike's Place. It's a public market that has been open for more than 100 years. It's full of fresh produce stands, unique shops, and the world's first Starbucks. I just love all the colors, smells, and just all around vibe. Pike's Place is also home to the Gum Mall. It might gross you out, but at least it's full of colors. After Seattle, we're gonna head up north to
Alaska.
visit Alaska. When you think of untamed,
Let me tell you something. If you haven't been to Alaska, you don't even, you have no concept of what you're missing. You can take all the pictures you want. It doesn't matter. Till you see it in person, it's mind-boggling. I mean, it is spiritually changing, soul changing. I can't even explain it. I guess the closest thing that I could say would be, and I haven't been to Germany yet, but obviously Germany's got kind of a soft spot in my heart after watching some videos of just how beautiful it is. That's the way I would think a German would feel about going to Alaska. If that makes any sense. The way I feel about going to Germany, and after seeing Germany, I'm sure I'll feel the way that I felt when I went to Alaska, or someone outside of America even having a bigger impression going to Alaska. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's our biggest state by far. I mean, it's huge and very low population and very tough. You know, you got to go at the right time, the right season. But it is beautiful.
wilderness, Alaska is it. And it's just a land full of some of the world's biggest mountains and glaciers, and it's one of the few places in the USA where you can see the aurora borealis. When I look at these landscapes, I mean, they're just so vast and untouched. I mean, it's unbelievable. One popular form of transportation is by helicopter or bush plane, because some spots are just so remote. So if you ever want to escape the chaos of the world, Alaska may be the place you gotta go. After Alaska, we're gonna head over to Hawaii to visit the island of Oahu. All the Hawaiian Islands, I have to say Oahu is my favorite. I lived there for over 8 months on the North Shore, and it was some of the greatest times of my life. If you love hiking, surfing, or adventures, Oahu is the place for you. One of the most popular places on Oahu is Waikiki. It's a perfect combination of city and ocean. The beach is lined with high-rise hotels and shops. It is a perfect place to surf and catch some waves. Another one of the most famous places on Oahu is the North Shore. The North Shore is 17 miles of coastline that is home to some of the greatest surfing in the world. One of the most well-known beaches on the North Shore is the Bonsai Pipeline. The waves are created by a super sharp and dangerous reef that causes the waves to break just right. During the winter months, some of the most popular surfing competitions are held here, and the waves can reach over 20 feet high. When there aren't crazy waves, I love swimming on the North Shore. The water is so clear and the waves are just such a fun time to swim in. While we're still in Hawaii, we're going to head over to the island of Kauai. Of all
He's always doing that. Cliff jumping, climbing mountains. He'll be on this tiny little peak that'd be like 2 meters by 2 meters, and it'll be 1,000 meters up, in the air. I hope to God he never gets hurt, but he's gonna have some of the most amazing memories. But yeah, he cliff dives and climbs everything, hikes everywhere. More power to him. Hopefully not hurt himself.
All the Hawaiian Islands, Kauai is the oldest, making it the most beautiful and diverse. It's nicknamed the Garden Island, and when you go there, you'll understand why. One of my favorite places is the Napali Coast. There are very few places in the world, if any, that match the beauty of this coastline. The Napali Coast is filled with sea cliffs that rise 3,000 feet from the ocean, contrasted with deep, narrow valleys that empty to the sea below. There's several ways to experience the Napali Coast. One of the best ways is by helicopter. Prices range from anywhere between $200 to $300 for a 50-minute tour. You'll be able to get some of the best views of Napali coastal cliffs and valleys. Another great way is through a boat tour. These range from 3 to 6 hours and cost upwards to $150 per person. If you're on a budget like me, There's plenty of hikes and lookout spots you can go to. One of my favorites is the Kalalua Lookout. Another amazing place to visit in Kauai is Waimea Canyon, nicknamed the Grand Canyon of the Pacific. It's over 10 miles long and
Wow.
3,000 feet deep. I just love the contrast between the red rock against the tropical vegetation. After exploring the Hawaiian Islands, we're going to head back to the continental U.S. to visit the iconic.
Yeah, I think Hawaii is almost like another country. It's almost like a territory for us because it's so far away from continental America, and it's got a lot more native people there that they don't necessarily live the American lifestyle. I think it's actually more uh, foreign per se than even Alaska. Just because they're kind of stick to themselves as far as islands. Uh, I haven't been there. I've got family that have been there. They said it's just unbelievably beautiful. It is expensive though, like most islands. With a good, most islands that are with a good economy and everything. But because they gotta ship everything in, it gets real expensive. But yeah, it's almost like another country.
New York City, with its massive skyscrapers, diverse cultures, and hustle and bustle atmosphere, it's a place that needs to be experienced. I was fortunate enough to live in New York for a few months, and the city lifestyle quickly grew on me. One of my favorite places in the city is the Brooklyn Bridge. The Brooklyn Bridge is one of the most photogenic places in all of New York. It's this massive bridge that connects the boroughs of Brooklyn to Manhattan. The bridge was finished in 1883 and it's become one of New York's most popular attractions. I used to love walking across the bridge and enjoying the view of Manhattan and the water below. The bridge is a great place to experience during the day, and it gets even more stunning at night because you'll be able to see the city lights. One of the most famous places in New York City is Times Square. It's one of the world's most popular tourist attractions, bringing in over 50 million people each year. It's full of thousands of lights and advertisements. I mean, there's just so much energy there. You can walk around there for hours. There are entertainers on the street and tons of other random attractions. Now, if you want a nature break from the city, you can explore Central Park. Opened in 1876, it's home to beautiful bridges, tons of walkways where you can exercise or ride a bike. I mean, just such a beautiful contrast between the hectic city life. After exploring New York, we're going to head.
Yeah, I can't explain it enough or express it enough or talk about it enough. It seems New York City is not America. Los Angeles is not America. Miami's not America, neither Chicago or Detroit. There's so much diversity, and I think that America gets a bad rap because sometimes it's due to someone coming to America and they experience one thing, one city, one town, even one state, and they just assume it's like that across the whole United States. And it's not. Everything's different. If you like living in tiny apartments and being able to get a steak at 3 o'clock in the morning and, not worrying about uh, dealing with a car or any of that stuff, New York City may be fantasy land for you. I wouldn't live there for free. It's just the lifestyle that I want. I want quiet and, a bigger yard and, you know, having a car and just a different lifestyle. Politically, it's different for me. Economically, it's different where I live. Everything's different. If you go to Washington or Oregon or California, they have different drug laws than they'll have in, Texas or Florida or North Carolina. So it's real important that when getting opinions on America, they're not based on one or two or three or four or five places. Like I said, there's 20,000 cities and towns. So to look at New York, who has a population of 8 million and a general population of around 20 million, if you include the surrounding area, that's like 6, 7% of the country, and that, which is nothing. And that's at the biggest city, one of the biggest cities in the world. At 8 million, that's the population. That's only 2% of the population. So that's not America. It's part of America, but it's not America. I mean, you can get a 1 bedroom apartment in New York that's $4,000 a month, or you could get a 6 bedroom, 6 bath house that's $4,000 a month in another state. So completely different world. And that goes for laws, political, economic, climate, population density, everything. You go out into Montana, I mean, there's like more cows than people in Montana. I mean, it all depends on where you live and what you experience. So it's important not to stereotype major cities or minor cities. You can't take some poor town in one state and say that's the way everybody in America lives, because it's not. And you can't go to Beverly Hills in California and say that's how every American lives, because it's not. It all depends on where you're at, what you do for a living, and, you know, what the laws are there and everything. Can't stress it enough. It's the size of Europe. And just like Europe has 47, 48, 50 different countries, America has 50 different little countries.
Head over to the nearby region of New England, now located in the northeastern part of the U.S. New England is comprised of Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Maine. New England is one of the most historical regions in the U.S. It's where the Pilgrims settled in 1620, and it's also where the Revolutionary War was born. I mean, just such a fascinating region. The most populous city in New England is Boston. Located in the state of Massachusetts, Boston is one of the oldest municipalities in the U.S., founded in 1630 by the Puritan settlers. Historical events such as the Boston Tea Party took place during the Revolutionary War here. Today, Boston is a thriving city, home to universities such as Harvard and MIT. Now, if you want to escape the city and see some nature, I suggest going to Vermont. This may be one of the best places to visit during fall. The trees turn to unbelievable red, orange, and yellow colors. Vermont is also home to historical towns such as Brattleboro. Now, another one of my favorite states in New England is Maine. Maine is the northeasternmost point in the U.S. as it borders Canada. It's famous for its scenic coastline filled with lighthouses and lobster shacks. One of my favorite cities in Maine is Portland. It's a charming city on Maine's coast. It was first settled in 1623 by European settlers. Today it's known for its old port district and harbor. One of the coolest places is the Portland Head Light. It's a historic lighthouse that was built all the way back in 1791, making it the oldest lighthouse in Maine. Another beautiful place in the state is the Acadia National Park. Acadia is mostly located on the Mount Desert Island. The national park is full of granite peaks, rocky coasts, and tons of beautiful trees. I have to say it's one of the most impressive national parks on the East Coast. After Maine, we're going to head to the opposite side of the country to visit the Florida Keys. So the Florida Keys are a Coral Cay archipelago located right off of southern Florida. It's basically the American version of the Bahamas. What's really impressive is that all the islands are connected by a road, making it one of the coolest drives in the US. I was out in Florida in December and I really wanted to drive all the way to the end of the Keys. When you drive on the bridges, you'll be able to see the blue Caribbean Sea. One of the most impressive ones is the 7-mile bridge. At the time of its construction, it was one of the longest bridges in the world. I mean, it just looks like it never ends. The final destination on the Keys takes you to the city of Key West. It's the most southern place in the continental US. We spent the sunset swimming on Fort Zachary Taylor State Park Beach, and it was just the perfect way to end the day. Alright, after Florida, we're going to head over to Wyoming.
The Keys is really an amazing place, and it has unbelievable sunsets. Probably what it's known for, mostly. Hemingway spent a lot of time there, and he has cats that have 6 fingers on their paws. If you're not familiar with that, look it up. Hemingway's cats, and they roam free in Key West. So you have these 6-fingered cats everywhere. Well, not everywhere, but around. And Maine has everything's lobster. So you get lobster tacos and lobster salad and all kind. Everything has to do with lobster. It's almost like chicken there. The Keys is unbelievable. It's a very charming town. It has kind of the charm of New Orleans without the darker side of New Orleans. If that makes any sense. I did a video on Key West. Check it out in my playlist, under the U.S.A. playlist.
Coming to visit Yellowstone National Park. I went here a few weeks ago.
Yeah, people don't realize how many parks we have and how big they are. So there's 429 national parks, which means large scale, Yosemite, that kind of stuff. That's not, and then every city and state has their own parks also. A lot of them you can camp at and stuff like that. Now hang on to your calculator for this one. Alaska has a park that is 13.2 million acres, which is bigger than Yellowstone National Park, Yosemite National Park, and Switzerland combined. Do you guys use acres? I think you do use acres, don't you, in Europe? So it says here, without getting too deep, the national park system in America, which is federal, spans more than 84 million acres, which is 210,000 square miles or 540,000 square kilometers. A lot of beauty to see. A lot of them out west in Alaska. But there's something in every state, whether it's national or state parks. You can just get a camper, recreational vehicle type thing, and just stay in parks all across the world, or not across the world, across America, instead of staying in a hotel. Some people do that. Some people live in them because they want to see everything in America, and then they'll go to a hotel every once a week or every 2 weeks or something just to get a little bit more luxury out of it.
And it was a magical experience. Now, one of the most famous places in Yellowstone is the Grand Prismatic Spring. It's the third largest hot spring in the world with a depth of 160 feet, and from above it displays a remarkable rainbow color. You can walk on the platforms around the spring, but you'll get the best view by taking the short hike up to the Grand Prismatic Spring overlook. Another iconic spot in the park is Old Faithful. It's one of the world's most famous geysers because of its reliability. It erupts around every 90 minutes and the boiling water can reach 185 feet high. You can also make a drive out to the Upper Falls. It's one of the most powerful waterfalls I've ever seen. Another less popular but just as stunning spot is Mammoth Springs. I went there first thing in the morning and it was magical with all its mist coming off the hot spring terraces. Now while we're still in Wyoming, we're going to head over to the nearby Grand Tetons National Park. I have to say this is one of my favorite national parks. I just love the incredible scenery and the unique jagged shape of the Grand Tetons. I mean, there's tons of hikes to go on. One of my favorites is to Delta Lake. It's a somewhat challenging hike, but when you reach the top, you're rewarded with a blue Gatorade colored glacier lake that has the backdrop of the massive Grand Teton Peak. I mean, it's just hard to beat the location of the spot. When I went there, I just had to jump in the water. I have to say it was some of the coldest I've ever been in, but nothing makes you feel more alive than a polar plunge in some glacier water. If you want a more relaxed experience in the Tetons, you can take the ferry across Jenny's Lake and then make a short hike up to the waterfall. Now after Wyoming, we're going to make the 2-hour drive to Idaho to visit the St. Anthony Sand Dunes. I mean, this place is bizarre. It's over 10,000 acres of sand dunes right next to some farmland. I mean, it just feels so out of place. But the whole area is the ultimate playground. Some of the dunes reach 400 feet high, Now, if you love riding dune buggies or dirt bikes, this is the place you gotta go. My grandparents live nearby, so I've come here many times. Whenever I'm here, I feel like I'm in Dubai or somewhere exotic. It's just such an epic place you gotta visit if you're ever in Idaho. Now, after Idaho, we're going down to Utah to visit the famous Bonneville Salt Flats. The Salt Flats are located about 2 hours west of Salt Lake City. It's one of the craziest locations in Utah and the world. It's basically 30,000 acres of mud covered in a layer of salt. There's no vegetation, so all you see is white and the surrounding mountains. The Salt Flats have been featured in many music videos and movies such as Pirates of the Caribbean. I love coming out here and just messing around on the salt, whether it's setting up a tramp on the Salt Flats or jumping over my car. Since the salt is completely flat, the world's fastest land record has been set here. If you do go, be cautious about driving on the salt because you can sink your car if the salt isn't dry. Now when it rains, the Salt Flats become the world's largest mirror, and it's just truly a surreal place that you have to visit if you're ever in Utah. After Utah, we're going to New Mexico to visit Shiprock. Now this may be one of the most random and unique rock structures I've ever seen. Special thanks to my friend David and Rule for helping me out with the footage here. He has some amazing shots of Shiprock. What I think is so unique about it is the volcanic spines that lead up to the rock. From a Google Earth point of view, you can see 3 volcanic spines that all come together at the rock. I mean, I've never seen anything like it before. The rock is sacred to the Navajos. They named it the Rock with Wings. I mean, what a bizarre place. While we're still in the southwest, we're going to visit Lake Powell. Now, Lake Powell is one of the coolest man-made lakes in the world. It's a reservoir that is located in Utah and Arizona. It's been called America's Lost National Park because you feel like you're in the Grand Canyon, except it's filled up with water. Now, Lake Powell was created back in 1960. A lot of my family and friends will rent a houseboat and go boating down here for weeks during the summertime. I mean, I just can't think of a better place to go wakeboarding, and it's a mecca for cliff jumping and water sports. I mean, Lake Powell is such an incredible place, and I hope you all can visit one day. Now, a super cool spot right outside Lake Powell is Horseshoe Bend. It's this picturesque section of the Colorado River surrounded by massive cliff walls. Another really fascinating nearby attraction is Antelope Canyon. It's located just 20 minutes from Horseshoe Bend. Now, Antelope Canyon is one of the most impressive slot canyons in the world. From the outside, the area just looks like a normal desert landscape. As you descend in the slot canyon, you'll witness some of the most beautiful sculpted sandstone. The canyon was formed by flash floods and thousands of years of erosion. Now, for our last destination, we're going back to Utah to visit Zion National Park. Now, Zion is just out of this world. Pictures and videos don't do it justice. It's home to steep red rock cliffs that are thousands of feet high. One of my favorite and most famous places in Zion is the hike to Angel's Landing. It's about a 5-mile round-trip hike that's famous for its sketchy chain trail. We crossed the bridge over the Virgin River and headed up the trail. We hiked up some steep switchbacks until we reached the top. Angel's Landing is famous for its 1,000-foot drop-offs and chains that lead the way. I did the hike in the winter, so it was icy at times. I bought my 360 camera so I could get every possible angle of the trail. I was able to reach the top, and the view just blew my mind. I was able to see all of Zion's Canyon. I was just surreal. If you can handle the heights, I hope you can hike Angel's Landing sometime in your life. Well, that is it for my USA Top 25. Let me know where your favorite place is.
Maybe I missed it, but did he not have the Grand Canyon? I would have to respectfully disagree that the Grand Canyon is not one of the top 25. Well, maybe I missed it. I would also have to disagree if that Las Vegas isn't one of the top 25. If I didn't miss that. There's a lot of places I would have put in here. He's a lot more of a nature guy. And I get it. But I mean, if you're coming to America, I mean, Washington, D.C., to see everything that, has to do with the government, all the government buildings and, the Pentagon and Capitol and the White House and, Washington Monument, Jefferson. And there's so many places. It's hard to say. A lot of people think Miami, which is sort of by Key West, so you could do a Key West Miami type deal. But yeah, I mean, definitely Grand Canyon and definitely Las Vegas. You don't even have to gamble, just to see it, just to experience it. Um, Las Vegas Strip is insanity. I mean, it makes Times Square look like a motel on Route 66. I don't know where else. So many places. It's hard. It's hard to have a list of only 25. Anyway, if you guys haven't been to America, I hope you come. And just remember, it's a lot bigger than people think. A lot bigger. It would take you 5 days to drive from the east coast of America to the west coast of America. That's not including Hawaii or Alaska, just the continental United States. 5 days of driving, straight driving. So it's like when people say, oh, I'm going to Europe. Well, you saw 1% of Europe if you're lucky. Same idea when you come to America. You're here for a couple of weeks, you saw 1% of America. So, anyway, obviously, I'm proud of my country. And even though I'm going to experience what the rest of the world has to offer, there is a lot that's offered in America. And I hope that you guys get to check it out if you haven't already. That's all I got for you today. Another great video by Ryan, as always. If you're new to my channel, it's anything and everything that interests me as an average middle-aged American. That's international travel, learning about other cultures and countries, learning more about my own country, the United States, and seeing what other people think about the United States and Americans. If you haven't subscribed already, I appreciate it if you did. Here's some other videos you might want to check out. I do appreciate you, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.